Adam, if you haven't started recording, if you can start recording now, that would be great. And as I said, please ask your questions through the chat session. So the integration with IBM has been taking place for a little while, and we've gone through several iterations of what we've done. Well, we're going to talk about a few of those today and how they fit together, and some of the options that we can look at in supporting customers that already have the IBM ISAM platform, or customers that are looking at that. So next slide, please. So what we're trying to do here is slightly different from what we've looked at in the previous two presentations. This time we're looking at, based on context or circumstances or information, that we then provide the appropriate login for the user. So if they're going to do something that's high security or poses a risk or seems out of the norm for that user, then using IBM's technology to assess and understand those risks, it may then ask the user for a higher level of authentication. And that higher level of authentication could be Vein ID 5. And the reason we would use Vein ID 5 in that context as a higher level of authentication is because of its ability to genuinely prove the user's there. As we've talked about before, with even with two-factor, but certainly with usernames and passwords, that they don't prove that the user is actually in possession of the device that they're accessing the service from. All it does is prove that someone has that information. And that's where we see the big difference in proving that someone genuinely is the right person and is the person that's able to access that content or that information. Next slide, please. So the integration is quite similar, and I think Peter talks through this quite a lot more in his presentation. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but again, we're utilising the OpenID protocol to integrate Vein ID 5 and to provide what is a simple single sign-on, easy integration for both the user and the organisation. And this is very quickly done and can be delivered. Next slide, please. And as we talked about the user journey a couple of times, and most of the people on the call have sat through these two, so I don't want to keep going over the same information every time. But it's really about the fact that we're capturing the user's fingerprint, finger veins, using the standard laptop camera. Nothing more complicated or detailed than that. No infrared, no ultraviolet. And we've been doing this for 20 years. The big shift is to using the standard camera. And with that, everything is encrypted. We never actually capture an image or a picture of the person's hand. We're only capturing a mathematical representation of the vein pattern within their fingers. And that enables us to provide a match to who the user is. And simply by raising their hand to the camera, that they're able to do this. And this offers a great user experience, removes the risk that we see for all the inherent risks of passwords, compromise, theft, can't be borrowed, can't be loaned, can't be written down. And as we see more and more organizations start to implement tougher password policies, up to 16 characters we're seeing, and we've even heard of another organization that's talking about 32 characters. It becomes increasingly difficult and expensive to look after and manage passwords. So finding a better way, and we believe Vein ID 5 provides that, to enable users to authenticate to the services they need to, is absolutely fundamental. So Adam, are you ready to start the video, please?
Let's talk about authentication. When we look at authentication, we see, in fact, lots of pain and we see little joys. So passwords, of course, are a mess. So they can be forgotten. It's damn hard to put a right policy for them. People start using them everywhere. They're the cause of breaches. I think we all know that. So next is multi-factor authentication. But with multi-factor authentication, of course, you also get quite some friction and some challenges to take. For example, people are asked multi-factor authentication to provide codes and so on numerous times a day. Not good. Also, when tokens are used for multi-factor authentication, they can forget their token. Similarly, when they have things like passcodes sent to their mobile, when there's no reception, well, there's no code neither, and so sometimes they can simply not log on. And also, if these passcodes do arrive on the phone, they sometimes have some delay, and the delay can take too long, and the users get annoyed, frustrated. So with Verify Access, you can do better, and you can provide smart and adaptive authentication. Let me explain. So first of all, what is Verify Access? Verify Access is a very rich featured solution for everything which has to do with access management, and it covers the whole range of personas. So for consumers, employees, partners, and contractors, giving them the right access after a smart authentication, and also other functionalities such as single sign-on. It's fully equipped to handle the federation protocols like OIDC, SAML. It has risk-based access, so risk-based authentication, risk-based authorization also, and it also provides API protection. And this, so not only for legacy applications, but also for your SaaS applications, for enterprise applications, and so on. So what do we mean with smart? So we have three categories. First one is context. So, and in this slide, I just named some of the possibilities that how we can use context to do smart authentication. So first off, there's a very smart, intelligent integration with IBM Trusteer, which is our anti-fraud system, which is running there over in the cloud, and has the ability to provide Verify Access with a risk score. And that risk score is based on numerous factors, like, for example, have I seen that device before? Is the device containing malware, for example? But also things about the user, for example, have I seen this account been used before? Is there some strange things happening regarding to location? For example, I log in now in London, for example, and 2 hours later, I log in China. That's not okay. That's malicious behavior, and that should be indicated by the risk score. Another thing with authentication is that you don't want to offer a specific multi-factor authentication when the person has not yet registered for it. For example, don't ask him to go and look your go and see your authenticator while you know it's not even registered to it. So that's also part of smart. Then, of course, we have other more simple contexts, like, for example, day and time. The requested application. Why bother with multi-factor authentication if it's not a critical application? Similarly, and very popular in these days of zero trust, is the integration with the device itself. So with Verify Access, you can bring in context that's coming from your mobile device management tools, such as Mass 360, AirWatch, Iron Mobile, and so on, and use that to determine what needs to happen. For example, if you see that the device is compliant and managed, that, of course, will help you to decide if multi-factor authentication is necessary, yes or no. And then similarly, you can have different user data coming from external sources. Next category of smart is, of course, integration. So you should be able to integrate, and Verify Access can do that, with multiple and external IDPs based on an open protocol. These can be the social media ones, such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple ID, but this can also be your enterprise IDP, such as the Azure AD or some other system based on ADFS, for example. And also with integration, we mean that you must be able to integrate with a whole range of applications, from legacy applications to the most modern SaaS applications. And then finally, you must be able to offer your users numerous factors to authenticate. The first factors, as we call them, username, password, integrated Windows authentication, certificates, OAuth, LTPA, and so forth. You must also be able to provide things like passwordless authentication with the very popular FIDO2, which is coming up now. And then, of course, with Verify Access, we also provide an authenticator app, which is able to authenticate the user by sending them a push message and have them presented a fingerprint or a face ID and so on. And then, of course, we have other multi-factor authentication factors, such as sending passcodes via SMS or via email. We have the sequence-based passcode, FIDO2 UTF, which is the predecessor of the real FIDO2. And most importantly, we can also add custom your own authentication methods. So how do we integrate with Verify Access then? We have two options. So option A is the VenaID 5 registration and authentication is handled by an external system, an IDP, which is glued together with Verify Access using an open protocol such as OpenID Connect. Big advantage here is that it's straightforward and it's a loosely coupled integration. Option B then. Option B is where the VenaID 5 registration and authentication is handled within Verify Access. So Verify Access as being the identity provider, which then uses the SDKs from VenaID 5 to tightly integrate with that hand gesture authentication. The advantage of this is that it's going to be a very deep integration, which can be very flexible according to your needs. Next is a demo. So in the demo, we have a number of components, and in fact, this demo is showing the integration using the IDP service that is provided externally. And you can see that here on the top, it's the VenaID 5 IDP service. We have the Verify Access. We have the Windows 10 workstation, which is equipped with the software of VenaID 5 to handle the hand gesture authentication. And then finally, what the user wants to do is he wants to go to a demo portal here. And when he accesses a specific part of the demo partner, we want to step up the authentication and we want to trigger VenaID 5 authentication. So step one in the demo is the user is going to the demo portal. Verify Access will say, okay, you need this kind of authentication, namely username password authentication. He's going to prompt the user for username password, and the user now has access to the demo portal. Next is the user is going to click on a tile, on that green tile that you see over here. And this will trigger a policy that says for accessing this kind of content, you do need VenaID 5 authentication. And that's what's explained in this slide. So the user is trying to access that protected page. He will be redirected to the IDP service, and the IDP service will prompt the user for the hand gesture authentication, which will of course be done. And then the IDP service will redirect. The user is now authenticated, and the user will redirect through Verify Access. The user will have access to the content protected with VenaID 5. Hi, so in this demo, I'm going to show you
how Vein ID 5 and Verify Access work together to provide a smart, adaptive authentication process. When I go to the portal, I will have to sign in with my username and password, which is getting me to the portal, and I can choose from a number of tiles here. And in my policy, I have configured this green tile to be protected with hand gesture authentication. So when I click on this, I will have to provide my hand. Which is happening right now. And voila, I'm now accessing this page that I protected with hand gesture authentication. So next in the demo is I'm going to do exactly the same, but this time Verify Access will remember that I already authenticated using hand gesture this day, today, and will not ask for a strong authentication again. So I do the same here. I go to the portal, I click on the green tile, and now without providing authentication or strong authentication, I can now access this protected page. That's all for now. Thank you for watching the video.
And yeah, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, okay. So is there any more of Peter's video, or is that everything on there, Adam?
That's everything, Andy.
So that's great. So I think it was interesting seeing a different service that's being delivered with the step-up authentication based on information and reasons on location and other information as to why you would want to do Vein ID 5 at that time. So I think, as Peter said, and I think this is a nice little saying, passwords, they provide a lot of pain with very little joy, and we see this more and more with our customers, that they're seeing lots of issues with them still, that they're seeing constantly them used as the access point for breaches and for other challenges. So we need to look at how we move away from those and provide the users with a better experience. So I think that pretty well concludes everything on this section. Has anybody any questions for Patrick? Okay, so Patrick, I think you've escaped any significant questions. There's probably a couple of things that we could talk about before we conclude. How do you see the sort of the integration going further with the IBM platform? Because I think at the moment we've done one part, but I think there's others we can look at.
Mm-hmm. No, I think what you see, I mean, what Peter was showing, IBM Verify Access is what we very often call a Swiss Army knife for access management. Can integrate a lot of things like the Vein ID. But beside that, we're also moving more and more, obviously, towards cloud-based capabilities for authentication and authorization.
Yeah.
And that integration is, as we speak, well, it's there already. So very likely in the future, these kind of integrations will be more and more done with cloud or IDaaS solutions like we have. And
right.
That's probably the way forward for many people. Especially if they're looking at consuming these kind of services rather than building, maintaining, and handling it. Having that said, with the Swiss Army knife, as we call it, Verify Access, you can basically build whatever you want to. And it might cater for very complex use cases, especially when high security is required. So yeah, many exciting things coming up.
Good. Good. Yeah, I think from the sort of process we've been through with you guys, we've had lots of different options on what we can do. Continue to look at that and starting to work with some of the customers that we have already using the IBM platform. I think the joint integrations there will be quite successful. And quite interested in looking at different ways in which we can do those together. So, okay, that I think is everything from our side at the moment. Thank you very much for joining number session 3 with IBM. Patrick, thank you for taking time out of your holiday to join us. And as I said on the previous ones, the recordings will be available on the YouTube channel, and we'll be posting a link in the next couple of days. So thanks very much. Have a good afternoon, everybody, and we will see you again shortly for the next session.